Several months before the Battle of Yavin, the Rebel Alliance launches a daring assault on the then under construction Death Star, and it was terrible. Now, I've talked about this event in a prior video, but I've had countless people ask for a full battle breakdown, and I think it deserves a second look, including an analysis of Rebel Alliance battle tactics. So that's what we'll be doing today. At this point, the Death Star was stationed in the Horus system. It was still under construction and protected by a small fleet, made up of at least several Star Destroyers. Also present is Admiral Natasi Dalla, who is arriving at the Death Star for a meeting with Tarkin. The Rebel Alliance's assault is led by a Lucrehulk class battlecruiser, a ship which, alone, could not threaten the station, but which carried hundreds of starfighters. Immediately, active TIE fighters are ordered to form a defensive screen around the station. The Star Destroyers and the Death Star themselves are also scrambling fighters, but it's taking some time. Local capital ships are ordered to move and form a second line of defense. Although, to be honest, with the Rebel attack highly concentrated in starfighters, there's probably not a lot that the Star Destroyers themselves could do. The Lucrehulk quickly unloads 500 X-Wings in two distinct waves. The Death Star and the defense fleet have 1,000 TIEs to bring to bear, but it's taking some time. As the Star Destroyers continue to move in position and the TIEs continue to hold, the Death Star fires its super laser at only a 4% charge, instantly vaporizing the Rebel Lucrehulk from 2,000 kilometers away. With their flagship destroyed, the hundreds of Rebel fighters seemingly panic. The reinforcement TIEs are not in position, and the Alliance actually has a fairly straight shot at the Death Star, with their first wave of about 250 X-Wings actually outnumbering the 120 TIEs. While closing the distance, the X-Wings attack and disable Dalla's ship, but by the time they're in firing range of the TIEs, none of them engage, instead attempting to blow by and attack the Death Star itself. This ends up being disastrous, and the X-Wings are massacred. By the time the second line arrives, the perimeter has been reinforced with TIEs from the Death Star and Star Destroyers. The second wave of Rebels runs into a brick wall against over 4 times as many fighters, and the Empire is able to eliminate all Rebel starfighters while losing less than 100 of their own. Now obviously the X-Wing's choice to basically turn their backs to the TIE fighters while also attempting to outrace the TIEs was a terrible one. Although the Imperial starfighters were caught flat-footed, they were still able to adapt and put fire on the defenseless ships. That being said, although the assault was an unmitigated disaster, I do think the Alliance had a shot here. But let's examine their strategy with a bit more depth. First, why did the Alliance even bother bringing the Lucrehulk? It was honestly just a target, and X-Wings possess hyperdrives. I mean, perhaps there were fuel concerns, but if not, I ditched the capital ship entirely. It's just too big of a target, and realistically, cannot hope to damage an enemy Star Destroyer, much less the Death Star. But even if we bring the Lucrehulk, the fighter management on the Rebel side was absolutely atrocious. X-Wings are far superior to TIE fighters. They should have put the pressure on the first defensive wave, instead of trying to slip by. That being said, I understand the need to hit the station quickly, so here's a good compromise. Swap 200 X-Wings out for the fastest fighter you have, which can also carry torpedoes. The A-Wing would have been a perfect choice for this role, but in Legends, the ship wasn't invented until after Yavin. I think the R-22 or maybe even a Republic starfighter would suit the purpose well. The goal here is to use a Garm Bell Iblis style A-Wing slash on a very large scale. The first line of fighters is made up totally of X-Wings, while the second line is the fast movers. However, these fast movers are supposed to appear like X-Wings, so they maintain formation and speed. The X-Wings fully engage the defensively positioned TIEs. Once it's time for the second row to join the attack, they instead break off and accelerate at full speed. This really leaves the defense flat-footed, and now with 200 fighters being shot straight at the Death Star. This is a better strategy because it doesn't leave your attack ships undefended, but it maintains the same hit-and-run type of attack style, however, just with an element of surprise. It would be interesting to see how the defensive fleet reacts here. Some of the TIE fighters might turn to chase, in which case the X-Wings will be able to easily mop them up, sort of like how the TIE fighters did in the actual scenario. The fast movers will really have no resistance at this point. The Star Destroyers are too far out of range and the TIEs haven't launched yet. They will have to avoid the large turbo lasers of the Death Star Star itself, but this is why using fast-moving fighters instead of X-Wings actually makes more sense. So we're still doing the risky, balls-to-the-walls type attack on the super weapon, but with tactics and fighters more well-suited for that type of attack. Now, to be honest, destroying the Death Star probably isn't likely, even though it is under construction. Instead, I would have the 200 fighters do one really clean pass on the station, unloading as much weaponry as possible. If the X-Wings manage to clear out the ties before the reinforcements arrive, then they can follow suit. However, Imperial reinforcements are coming, and at this point I think it's more important to actually live to fight for another day. So after that first run, hyperspace out of there. That way you still have the fighters available for a second attack later. If that's the case, you might actually want to bring the Lucrehulk, that way you can conserve fuel for the initial jump and have the starfighters jump away individually. Then you can regroup, continue to scout out the system, and if a second opportunity presents itself, attack again. This is how the Rebel Alliance best works, with flexible, non-committal assaults, rather than attempting to straight up outfight the Empire with sheer numbers. That, however, is just my opinion. Does my strategy make sense? Let me know all of that and more down in the comment section. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, this has been your host, EckhartsLadder. Until next time, may the Force be with you.